Election Yard here, updating the 2025 Virginia governor's race as we're here at the beginning of October. A little over a month to go in the election. Virginia will have a new governor elected in early November, so a little bit over a month from now. There are several November elections going on that you may be aware of. You have all of the races here in Virginia aside from the gubernatorial race. We will touch on those briefly at the end. You've also got up in New Jersey, the race for governor and for the state assembly. In California, you've got the referendum on redistricting. And then back up to New York City, you've got the mayoral race, which certainly has not been light on content. And you can go to electionyard.com for all of that. We are following them all. So back to Virginia, the race for governor. You've got Democrat Abigail Spanberger, Republican Winsome Earl Sears. There's no two ways about it. This is Spanberger's race to lose at this point. It has been for some time. We are starting to come down the stretch now. It doesn't look like any of this has changed. This has led us and others to ask, quite simply, if the race is effectively over. So Earl Sears is at the point now where she and the Virginia GOP are just throwing whatever they can at the wall to see what doesn't roll down. We will circle back to that because one of the reasons why this is happening is the polling. So before the poll that we're going to talk about, last week, Election Yard moved its race rating for the governor's race in Virginia from lean Democratic to likely Democratic. So let's get into the reasons why. So on the polls, of the last 5 polls that have been released as of the date that we did this video, 4 of them have been by GOP pollsters or our Republican internal polls. There have been reliable independent polls in this race, but a lot of GOP pollsters getting in there also. But let the record show, because I know some of you were thinking about the term flooding the zone that we all heard back in 2022. Let the record show that even the Republican internal polls, every single one of them shows Spanberger winning this race. Maybe just by varying degrees, but they all show her winning. The only recent poll that wasn't from a Republican-aligned source was the CNU poll, Christopher Newport University. This poll was conducted in mid-September. We have the results on the screen. It had Spanberger at 52, clearing the magic number of 50, while Earl Sears is at just 40%. There are 8% undecided, but if you're over 50%, those undecideds don't matter. So we did a brief write-up on this poll and a few others at electionyard.com, which you should totally check out, by the way. Some of the points from this poll that were interesting were, and before I get into those, this was a really good poll for Spanberger, not just on the top line, but some of the cross tabs as well. They were really good numbers for Spanberger, and they were really bad numbers for Earl Sears. The enthusiasm gap is way on the side of the Democrats in this race. It was a poll that had the same partisan weight as the election in 2021, which was a pretty good Republican year. And Spanberger in this poll by CNU is winning independents by over 20 points. And of course, that was a group that Glenn Youngkin won fairly comfortably back in 2021. So let's be clear. If Spanberger wins independents by even 10 or 15, who's to say over 20, but even 10 or 15, she's going to coast to the finish line in November. The electorate would have to be substantially more Republican than 4 years ago to offset that. And where we're going right now, where the puck is heading right now in American politics, it just doesn't seem like that's the case. So now I'm going to anticipate what some of you out there are thinking. Hopefully you're not getting any spittle on your screen by screaming at it. You might think, well, McAuliffe was favored to win in 2021, but he lost. So let's dig into that a little bit further because I want to talk about that. Was McAuliffe favored to win in 2021, the majority of the campaign? Yes, he was. That is a correct statement. He was favored. But if you were to ask the question, was he favored by the end of the campaign? I mean, not by me, he wasn't. I was here in Virginia. I saw the momentum flip after Labor Day. As October carried on, it became apparent in the community, seeing the energy, seeing the vibes. There was a vibe shift, and it became clearer as we got closer to November that Youngkin had a real shot of winning the election. I was not shocked whatsoever that he won, whereas as of today, as I sit here at the beginning of October, I would be shocked if Earl Sears won this election. In terms of the polling, going back to 2021, because we're still talking about this, McAuliffe generally led until early October. So it was right around this point that the poll started to turn. Though you did have a poll by Mary Washington in mid-September, it did have Youngkin ahead on likely voters. That was one of the first polls to show him ahead. So one thing you would notice in late September and early October of 2021, however, was that the polls were generally a lot closer than now. If you look at 2025, poll back to 2025, Spanberger's leads in this race have been consistently between 8 to 12 points. McAuliffe's leads were definitely single digits. I'm going to give you a few. So the Monmouth poll in September had it 48-45. Roanoke College had it 48-41. That was the biggest spread you'll see here at 7 points. Fox News was 48-44. Emerson was 49-48, so a 1 point race. Then CNU, the poll we just cited from 2025, they were 49-45. And CBS, YouGov, they were at 50-47. So even during the summer, though, even before the stretch run of September, October, McAuliffe led, but he wasn't leading by the margins that Spanberger is. You might get a random poll here and there that had him up 10 or something like that. But generally speaking, the leads were smaller. And when the polls started to flip in October, they were all indicative of a close race, regardless of who they had ahead. By the time we got close to the election, some of the pollsters had Youngkin ahead a couple points. Some of them had McAuliffe ahead a few points. I think that the polling average by election day was something like Youngkin +1, which ended up being pretty close because he won by 2. And in terms of whether or not it was an upset, I actually really don't think it was an upset at all at that point, because there were some definite signs in 2021 that Youngkin had a real shot at winning. I'm going to just say this too, because I think there might be somebody out there that needs to hear it. Youngkin was a way better candidate than Earl Sears. And in 2021, he had some national political wins at his back, which Sears does not. McAuliffe's support was a little soft. Republicans were fired up to vote, and some Democrats and independents were, I would say, indifferent to McAuliffe. So you add a lot of those things together, and it's, looking back, it's really not too difficult to see why Youngkin was able to pull it off. So all this to say, you want to bring this back to 2025. If you don't see the independent polls move in any appreciable way in, say, the next 2 weeks, forget it. This thing's over. So another reason that the Democrats are feeling good about this race is fundraising. The latest reports dropped about a month ago. Spanberger continues to just absolutely clean Earl Sears' clock. Spanberger raised $41.1 million. Sears has only raised $16.8 so far in the campaign. And then you look at the cash on hand statistic, it's almost 3-1 for Spanberger. Again, another data point if you want to compare to 2021. Youngkin had money, obviously, to spend, and he ended up being pretty neck and neck with McAuliffe in the fundraising race. This is totally different. It's a blowout. So shifting over to the issues in the campaign, we talked about this a little bit a month ago. The issues have shifted a little bit, not a lot. For Spanberger, she's talking about the economy all day, every day. She's talking about affordability and cost of living. She's talking about jobs. She's running ads about the big, beautiful bill and rising costs and tying it to job losses and rising prices. This is the kitchen table stuff that Democrats sometimes forget to talk about in campaigns. She's also talking about healthcare and how the economy and federal policy are going to be impacting rural hospitals. So now, as for Earl Sears, if you were in Virginia, you would see that she's made a pretty hard pivot to the so-called culture war issues. The GOP campaign in general has done a lot of that, and I will cite some ads that I've seen in the next few moments. There was an anti-Jay Jones ad, Jay Jones, the Democrat running for Attorney General, saying the Democrats have lost their minds. That was literally the first line. And then they go into saying that he's soft on crime and Jay Jones is going to let all the criminals out of jail. So that is one thing. But then if you're in Virginia, though, you might have seen the latest ad by Earl Sears. and I've actually seen it more than once in the last couple of days. They're leaning pretty heavily into the trans panic stuff. So this ad, if you watch it, it said that Spanberger is going to let men in locker rooms with your female children, and Spanberger wants children to get sex changes without their parents knowing, then calls her a radical, saying that she's for they, them, not us. As far as the thing about her being a radical, I think that's going to be a tough sell, because if you're seeing Abigail Spanberger out there and you see the image that she has been projecting throughout the entirety of this campaign in Virginia, she is about as bland and moderate as it gets. So I think you would struggle to convince people that she's a radical and that she's a lunatic. Further, at least in the ads that I've seen, and your mileage may vary, you don't see Earl Sears talking so much about the economy anymore and what her plans are. It's ads like this, and I think in and of itself, an ad like this, the one I just talked about, is an admission of sorts. It's like she knows she's losing, her campaign knows she's losing, and she's turning to what has worked for some GOP candidates in the past. And now, before you say, well, this sort of stuff worked for Donald Trump in 2024, it might work here, I want to say two things. First, Donald Trump lost Virginia 3 times. So it didn't work here. And second, the economy is definitely one of the top issues, if not the top issue in the campaign. Trans people in locker rooms is not. So how many people do you think you're going to swing in the big picture by talking about this and glossing over the economy, which is always one of the big things in a political campaign that people care about? People in this country vote with their wallets all the time. So I think, to sum that point up, I think Earl Sears, with the trans scare stuff, she's already telling Regis, I'm using all my lifelines, and unless there is just some gigantic whopper of Oppo research that they're sitting on about Spanberger for an October surprise, then this is probably about what you're going to get out of her. And at this point, given the polls that we've seen, I don't think these attacks are really sticking. You have to genuinely wonder what else Sears has in the bag of tricks, because if this is it, then she's cooked. So looking now at the early voting stats, let's look at those. vpap.org, vpap.org. It is a great website. It is maybe the best resource on Virginia politics on the internet. They did not compensate me to say that, but you can definitely go to that website. They do great work there. They reported as of September 30th, that's the day we pulled the stats, about 221,000 people had voted early in Virginia as of that date. About all we can tell you about that at this point is that it's about double what it was on that date 4 years ago. We didn't get to about 220,000 early votes until about a week later, so we were already into October when we got there. So early voting is running ahead of pace from 4 years ago, for sure. So now, if you're curious as to who is casting these votes, keep in mind, Virginia does not have voter registration by party. When you register to vote, you don't pick a party. You are just a voter. You are an unenrolled voter. Virginia is not like other states that break down the early vote by partisan composition because there are no parties. And yes, all primaries in Virginia are technically open primaries. When you go in to vote in a primary, they ask you what ballot you want. So now you can infer, based on where some of these early votes are coming from, who is casting those votes. But we're not going to do that because we would just be guessing. And there's still a whole lot of voting to be done. Over 3 million people voted in 2021 in Virginia. There will probably be more this time. So we have a ways to go yet. There are probably going to be other websites that are going to try to make those inferences. And again, I could spitball here and nobody would know until the election if I was right or wrong, but we want to give facts. So we'll try to keep the speculation to a minimum and just report what the early voting numbers are. So as of now, it appears there will be just one debate. October 9th at Norfolk State, NBC Wavy 10 in Hampton Roads is going to produce it. Not sure how much we're going to get out of this debate. I did want to mention it. I would expect Earl Sears to throw a lot of stuff out there and see which punches land, if any land at all, as she is the one who's clearly the underdog at this point. My guess is Spanberger will try to remain steady. She's leading the race. She's not the one who needs to get up there and start chucking Hail Marys. And now you have ads by Earl Sears saying, well, she's a radical, she's nuts, she's a lunatic, whatever they're saying. So I think Spanberger is going to go out there and try to portray the opposite, that she's steady and calm. So as for the original question that we asked in this video, is this gubernatorial race in Virginia over? I don't think it is yet, but I think we are getting close to that point. Like I said before, if you're going to use 2021 as a barometer, then I think about 2 weeks from now, we will know if the polls are going to start turning. Honestly, though, I think Sears is far enough behind that if it was going to happen, it probably would have already started. As of now, there's no indication at all that it's happening, which is why we made the move from lean Democratic to likely Democratic. You would much rather at this point be in Spanberger's shoes as of October 1st, because basically nothing has happened in this race to indicate that Earl Sears is making a comeback or that Spanberger has taken any appreciable hits at all. So that's enough on the governor's race. To end this video, we want to make a few quick points on some of the other races going on in Virginia. There's lieutenant governor, attorney general, and then the races for the House of Delegates, all 100 seats. As of now, I think the Democrats will win them all. So let's go point by point. The lieutenant governor's race, this is Ghazala Hashmi, the Democrat, versus John Reed, the Republican. This is by far the race that I have heard the least about in Virginia. I have not seen a single ad for this race. I have seen maybe a handful of lawn signs across the state. There may be some out there in pockets that I haven't visited, but I have seen very, very few. This is the forgotten race of this cycle, and I think that's why it will just most likely go with the governorship. Virginia doesn't usually split tickets by a lot anyway. And what I mean by that is, in other words, the results down the ballot are pretty similar. If you looked at the 2021 election, Youngkin, Earl Sears, and Jason Miyares, they all finished, I think, within a point of each other or less. So Virginia doesn't usually split tickets too much. As long as the race for governor isn't closer than expected, I think Hashmi is probably leading and will probably just be swept in with Spanberger if she ends up winning. So the race for attorney general, this one has some juice. This is Jay Jones, the Democrat, versus the incumbent Jason Miyares, a Republican. Miyares is trying to paint Jones as being soft on crime, while Jones is painting Miyares as a Trump lackey who wants to ban abortion. So let's be clear on this too. If Spanberger wins by 10 points, it will be a Democratic sweep, no question about it. It hasn't happened yet, but if the race at the top of the ticket is close, I think, and I have thought throughout this, that Miyares was the Republican on this ticket with the best chance of winning out of the three, because he is the only incumbent in the race. If he asks me the Republican that I actually think has the worst chance of winning, I actually think it's Earl Sears, if you can believe that, which is definitely not a great sign for the GOP ticket. But that's, I think, a pretty realistic evaluation of where we are. And then finally, a look at the House of Delegates in Virginia. Currently on the website, we updated our prediction a few days ago. We've moved it to 57 Democrats, 43 Republicans. That would be Democrats plus 6. Republicans minus 6 right now. It's 51-49 in favor of the Democrats. So we're predicting that the Democrats are going to grow their majority. The map in the House of Delegates really has tilted against the GOP, such that if you go down the list of Democratic seats and Democratic incumbents running for re-election, there are virtually no races in which a Democrat is getting pushed and is in serious trouble. Like, I can't think of one. There are some where the Democrat might have to work for it, might be reasonably close. Maybe Mike Fagan's out in Virginia Beach is one of them. But other than that, you don't really see too many Democratic incumbents breaking a sweat this year. And a lot of them, especially in Northern Virginia, a lot of them are unopposed. Now, on the other hand, you look at the Republicans, there are at least 7 districts that I know of that Kamala Harris won in 2024 that have a GOP incumbent now. And if it's a good Democratic year and the Democrats are winning up the ballot by 8-10 points, a lot of those Republican seats are going to be in trouble. Some of them, too, the fundraising has been tilted very pro-Democratic. There were incumbent Republicans that are getting killed in fundraising in this cycle so far if you go through the numbers. And you can do that at vpap.org, as we mentioned, because they have all the fundraising numbers too. If the Dems really are winning comfortably statewide, then yes, several of these GOP seats are in trouble. I'll go through a couple of them off the top of my head. HD 57 in Henrico, that's David Owen's seat. He was very, very fortunate to win his race 2 years ago. If not for a salacious scandal that popped during the campaign, I think he would have lost. HD 89, Chesapeake and Suffolk, that is an open seat, currently held by Baxter Ennis, a Republican. Casey Carnegie's the Democrat running. Mike Lamani is the Republican. The ads that I have seen have been almost entirely for Carnegie, which is the complete opposite of what it was 2 years ago. The ads were very, very tilted in favor of Baxter Ennis. So that race has been just a complete vibe shift from 2 years ago. And then HD 22, that's another one, Northern Virginia, Ian Lovejoy. There are many others. We have on electionyard.com and our prediction page the ones right now that we think are going to flip. But I mean, if it's a big Democratic win, which you can't rule out at this point, you also can't rule out the Democrats will find a way to get to 60 in the House of Delegates. And I really do think that the best case scenario for the Republicans at this point is that maybe they only lose a seat or two, but it looks like it's going in the wrong direction for them down there. So that is a look at how Virginia is shaping up as we approach the November election, and you can follow along with us at electionyard.com. Like and subscribe. Follow us on social media. We'll see you soon.